everyone, welcome to India.com's special series called The Leaders Speak. So, as we all know, that COVID-19 has adversely affected the global economy and has been causing widespread panic. But of the affected industries, travel and tourism industry appears to have taken the hardest hit across the globe. In fact, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council, the pandemic has cost the tourism industry almost $22 billion loss, and almost 50 million people have lost jobs worldwide. Therefore, it comes as no surprise that the tourism industry in India has witnessed a significant decline post COVID. So, to discuss the notions on travel and tourism's revival post pandemic blow, we have with us Vibhas Prasad, who is the owner at Leisure Hotels Group, Himanshu Shekhar, the editor at India.com, and Nivedita, who takes care of the travel section and India.com for the section.
Good afternoon, Vibhas. Welcome to India.com, and we have seen a lot of empty skies and hotels which normally used to be with and beaming with people and kids and family members around. So we have seen all those
Yeah.
faces, but the pandemic has taken a toll in almost all the families, not just travel industry, but everybody. It has touched some way or the other. So my first, you can say, a question to you is, how did you cope up, considering that the hotels were completely shut, there were no movement, lockdowns happening. So how did you manage to run through these troubled times, pay your staff, and keep the thing going in shape so that now we can restart?
Right. Thank you, Himanshu, for having me on the show.
Well,
As you rightly said, a pandemic like this comes perhaps once in a lifetime. Uh, for us, it's been more than a century, I think, since modern world can accept a pandemic like this. And all verticals were impacted, as you rightly said. So for a company like us, which largely operates with 27 properties in Northern India, and largely in the leisure segment, it was quite tough. I'll be honest enough to say that. We had a lot of robust bookings for the first quarter of last year, which was April, May, June, when
yeah,
suddenly we had the central government announce the lockdown. All businesses bookings started to disappear. We had to lock the hotels down for 2 months. We had repayments to our banks and institutions. We had to take care of more than 1,000 employees for whom we were paying them on a payroll basis. So, in effect, when the central government lifted the lockdown in June, we still did not have any business because our states still needed a RT-PCR negative test report. Now, you can well
yes,
remember in lockdown 1.0, no one understood what an RT-PCR report was. So for
yeah,
6 months, actually, till end of September, we had no business. So all we could rely or depend upon was an extension from institutions. And actually, it was in October when some recovery started. And I would be honest enough to say that the H2 was kind to the leisure markets. So we did see a good, robust recovery. And it seems like a repeat of last year when you had the lockdown come in the second phase. So it's been very tough for us. It's been tough for our employees. It's been tough for our guests. It's been tough for states like Himachal and Uttarakhand where we largely operate. But I think we are resilient and we will come out stronger at the end of the tunnel.
So, Vibhas, as you mentioned now that it has been really difficult for you, so I'd like to ask that, how did you manage to keep your staff going during this, pandemic? So, since then, obviously, things were really, really difficult on the business front as well. So, how did you manage to ensure that the staff was going, through this pandemic time?
So we actually make sure that we have a localized uh, pool of talent. So at our more than 27 properties, we roughly have a 85% mix of local talent. And when I refer to localization, I'm referring to people who live perhaps within 25 kilometers of the property. So when we had to shut down perhaps on the 24th or 25th of March last year, the first thing we did was to ensure that we had enough skeletal staff to maintain the property, to secure the property, to take care of the landscaping. So other than that, pretty much everybody in the first phase was sent back home. It took us a few weeks to grapple with the environment that we were living in. Then we started engagement with our staff online. Luckily, the penetration of mobile phones makes it easier to communicate with our guests. We understood what a Zoom session meant really. So we started engagement with our managers way back in phase one itself. But when the hotels opened in June, we were amongst the first hotels in the region to reopen our hotels almost immediately. So we were actually operating from mid-June, and we had our team back. They were doing training in the properties itself. They were getting exposure at some of the other properties. So we did offer some LWP in the first phase. Some casual and temporary staff were requested not to visit or not to come back to the properties. But we
Okay.
withstood the pain of our colleagues, and for 6 months we supported them till the hotels reopened fully in October.
Great,
That's
great.
nice.
Vibhas, I would like to ask now that we are hoping for a recovery and lot of travel plans and family plans which were on hold will now shape and will now take shape and materialize. So, what are the key things that you are keeping in mind so that the mistakes of the past are not repeated as when it comes to hospitality sector and we are safe and then we move forward? So, what are the requirements? Say, for example, tomorrow I plan to visit property or the Seven Riverview retreat in Jim Corbett.
Yeah,
So what should as a traveler, what should I actually take into account and what should I be prepared for? What were the documents that I will be asked
sure.
and stuff like that?
So sure. So, I mean, our biggest source market is the Delhi NCR actually for these regions. So, as soon as Delhi NCR opened up, we immediately started seeing requests for bookings almost overnight, literally. And you'd be surprised to know in the last 2 weeks, our current occupancy for our hotels in Himachal is at about 65%. And the demand for our hotels in Uttarakhand is at about 50%. So, the demand came up almost overnight. Having said that, currently the restrictions for Himachal have been completely lifted. You do not need to register on the portal as of yesterday. They did revise and bring back the mandatory registration. RT-PCR tests were done away with. In Uttarakhand, however, as of now till the 22nd, you need an RT-PCR test as well as a mandatory registration. So our clients, the typical queries that we receive in the offices is simply, can I bring my car? Where do I need to stop for registration? What do I need to do? Can I get a safe and secluded room for myself? I have aged parents. All my kids need to do online classes. Do you have a good enough internet connection? Some people actually ask, can I bring my dog along? So, the typical questions are around accessibility, infrastructure, safety, security, and some
Okay.
of them are looking for experiences again. But most people are just happy to get away from their own homes, apartments. They just
Get
want
out
good
of
weather. Yeah, they
yeah.
just want good weather. So a lot of demands are for hill stations. And unfortunately, the parks are not open, the national parks, so safaris are not open or rafting is not open yet. But I'm sure in due course they'll open as well.
So that's an important point you are making. So if somebody is planning for a trip to maybe Jim Corbett and if the Corbett National Park is not open, then that should also be, I mean, our the travelers, the trip maker should keep that also in mind. So that's an important point that you have mentioned with us. If Vidita, any
Also,
questions?
Vibhas, yeah, yeah. Also, Vibhas, like since now people have started planning their trip and everything. So, are there any new ideas or any packages that you've thought of to attract more
Sure.
visitors to the hotels?
So, over the last year and a half, actually, a lot of innovative names have come by, which refer to pretty much the same thing. You go for a vacation for 2 to 3 days, but because of the trend of kids studying from home or adults working from a resort, we have words like staycation, drivecation, workation, and so on
Vacation,
and
yeah.
so forth. I don't want to bore you with that, but it's basically saying the same thing. You get out of your home, you go into a nice environment, good weather, you stay in a secluded villa, cottage, apartment, uh, possibly make sure that you are not coming in contact with any other guests who may be perceived to be carriers. You make sure that you do immersive experiences in those destinations, whatever is possible under the current circumstances. And after resetting your system after a few days, you come back into the same mindset that we have been going through. So, we've been promising worry-free staycations because naturally our properties are secluded by nature, by the way they're designed. We operate boutique resorts. The density of built-up areas is largely small. So we are able to actually offer this at our resorts in Himachal and Uttarakhand, fortunately.
Okay. Okay.
Also, sir, I just want to ask one thing, like going the way forward, what do you think in the future, like since now things are slowly getting back to inching towards normalcy, what do you think are the measures to be taken to ensure that people start traveling without fear and everything is back in like in the pre-COVID times? What do you think actually are the measures to be taken to ensure that there is maximum footfall and people start planning their trips?
Sure. So I think the big question at a very macro level is obviously vaccination. It's India is still going through the motion of getting the population vaccinated, and that may take some time for reasons. So I would recommend for travelers who have not been vaccinated to at least get the mandatory RT-PCR test to make sure that they or their family members or their drivers or domestic health is not a carrier. And I would recommend for them to choose destinations and properties where they feel more secure, because the last thing you want is to be worried at a vacation that where is my child going, or are my aged parents safe. You don't want to come back from a vacation with this kind of a stress. But other than that, the concern is around regulatory environment. So across the world now they are starting to accept travelers who have been vaccinated, but there is no scheme between states yet. If I'm fully vaccinated, I should be able to carry that as a passport of sorts and travel across the
Yes.
state border. But I still need to show an RT-PCR test in some states. So a certain regulatory environment within India would be helpful to start off with. And we have ourselves to blame as hoteliers. We have ourselves to blame as citizens that we also let our guards down. And I would just recommend for everybody, including ourselves, to be cognizant that it's not gone yet. It may take us some time. People have been predicting a third wave, and I hope they're wrong for all our sake.
Yes, true.
So, sir, we have a fan question also. So, if you could answer that, that would be great. So, the question is that do you have any travel from hill packages for a group of people, which includes food or something?
Sure. So, so we actually have all-inclusive packages because restaurants around the properties are not open yet. So we offer typically a package which involves, for people who are flying in, airport transfer into a hotel. Most of our guests currently are actually bringing their own car. So it's a room for two or more. Then over and above that, we offer all three meals. There's a high tea included. In some other destinations, we have specific to the experience. So typically these packages start from about 6,000 rupees onwards for a couple. They come with high-speed internet. In some of our own properties, we do allow pets as well. So each property has different packages, but roughly at about 6,000 rupees onwards.
Great.
Okay, okay.
Because I think it's already been quite some time now, and I know your schedule is pretty busy. My question: any immediate future plans of opening anything? Or I remember last year around you had a new property in Rishikesh.
Sure,
So
sure.
any new ventures lined up this year?
So we have a very exciting announcement to make actually next month. I'm not at a liberty to speak, but I
Okay.
can just say it's a luxury resort coming up in
Okay.
Uttarakhand again. But the destination and those specific details, I hope I'll be able to share with you in a couple of weeks' time.
Sure. Sure. So at
So,
least we
I
are looking
have
forward to. Sorry, Toshi.
Yes,
Sorry. Go
yes.
ahead,
So
please.
I just wanted to ask, that we've been hit. The business has still been hit, though the recovery phase has started. So, are you looking forward for any sort of initiatives from the government or something?
Yeah, so I already mentioned about what we could do with the vaccination program. For all the people who've been vaccinated, they should be allowed to travel freely and produce the certificate if needed be at the state borders. I do feel there are a lot of requests our hospitality associations and committees have made to various state governments. There are a number of them. I don't want to bore our viewers with most of them, but the biggest one is that, as we can understand, travel, aviation, and hospitality industries have been very hard hit, and most of us have financial issues, whether it's with our banks or institutions. So, and the government has been fairly progressive with offering moratoriums, and there are other ECLS schemes that have come out. So, I think if the government views us as a affected or stressed out sector and keeps extending such soft loans, or give us further moratoriums, I think we should be able to come out much stronger, because the next 1 or 2 years, the domestic leisure market at least will bounce back strongly. And eventually we expect the inbound market to come in, where international travelers will also want to come in. But a year or two, it'll be tough for all of us.
Yes,
Right.
and I'm sure you're getting such a kind of fillers from the industry as well. And I hope that we have our finance minister and the team actually looking into it. They're also would be they, I'm sure they will be keen to get the business going as soon as possible. So,
Right.
uh, Vibhas, thanks for your time, and it was indeed a pleasure talking to you. And thank you, Nivedita, and thank you, Toshi, for joining us. And
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
hopefully,
Vibhas.
we'll be the first people to know about your new announcement, Vibhas, whenever it
Thank
happens.
you so much,
Absolutely. Looking
Himanshu.
forward to
Right,
hearing
right.
that.
Yes.
Yeah,
All the
thanks so much,
best.
and stay
And I
safe.
would like to request the fans that, they can, of course, do a booking as